What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios for another week of building Coruscant in Lego. This is going to feel a little bit like a episode of Deja Vu because I got the table in last week, which means I now need to take apart and rebuild everything I've already done, but bigger, better, and importantly, modular, because I want to be able to move some of this mock around or keep part of it built. I've also got a surprise haul coming in this week because I had to make an emergency order of parts. All that being said, there's lots to do, so don't forget to execute order 66 on that like button and let's get started. The added table has given me extra room to hold stuff, and as a result, it's gotten pretty messy and needs to be cleared off. One of the nice things about this mock is its open layout, because my previous two mocks, Utapau and Keto Nemoidia, had huge cliff walls that eventually turned into giant storage bins for loose parts, garbage, and other stuff, so the mocks would always feel dirty and cluttered. But now it's much easier to keep this clean because I just don't have as many sections to store lots of loose bricks and stuff. I also need to break down the steps and plateau so I can add in the new base plates, but I'm keeping the tunnel walls built because they're already in their final form. It is unfortunate to take apart most of the work I've already done, but the initial builds really helped me flesh out the design for the Senate steps and better figure out how everything will be laid out and what pieces I needed to order in bulk to build everything. Now that everything is cleared away, I need to pop out the gray base plates underneath the bank and entertainment complex and replace them with 32 by 32 base plates. The reason I'm doing this is because I want the last third of the mock to be detached from the rest of the build. And if I left the gray base plate in, I wouldn't be able to do that because I'd have to build part of the Galactic Senate building on that base plate. This turned out to be much messier than I anticipated. The base plates were in there pretty good and were connected to a lot of filler brick inside. So I ended up busting up some of the walls and broke up sections of the floor in places trying to get them out. But it's nothing I can't easily fix, and I'd rather have a small inconvenience now than a huge problem later. Okay, the table's clean and all the base plates are in. Well, all of the base plates I have. I still need to buy one more gray one and then I think two more of the 32 by 32s, but I won't need those for a little bit. I wanted to talk about this though and kind of explain a little bit more what I was talking about in the time lapse. The reason I ripped out these plates and put in the 32s is because I want this whole section to be removable. Everything over here is interconnected, it's not coming apart, but I wanted this last section to be able to be removed. So this whole area right here is just going to be flat, basically looking like this, some kind of just common area or open area, and it's going to run over the top of the base plate, and then we'll have all the stairs right here. So now, even though this common area is hanging over these light bluish gray base plates, they're not connected to them, so I can slide this whole section out and away from the rest of the build, whereas before this came to about right here, I think, so I would have had to have started building the steps on this base plate, thus connecting everything together. I wish I had done that with these other sections so that I could split this whole thing into thirds, but that would have required a lot more planning. There would have been seams potentially running through the base or maybe this building. I don't know. It was just more work than I wanted to think about in the beginning. Plus, I didn't really have any plans to move any of it then. Actually, now that I think about it, I bet I could have run a seam right there, running right on the edge of this building and just cutting into that base a little bit, so that actually wouldn't have been that big of a deal. And now that I finally got the tables in and everything set up, I can actually start on this. I am going to have to do some planning and readjusting because I'm not sure how big this section is going to be, so I think what I'm going to do next is map out how wide I want the stairs to be, map out how wide I want the Galactic Senate building area to be, and then the remainder will be for this section. And I think by doing that, I'll have gotten rid of this space issue over here, because if the stairs start right here, you'll have all this open area. I'm probably going to have like some stone planter boxes right here with some trees and plants, maybe a couple of benches. So it'll be a nice little secluded section away from the bustle of Coruscant where senators or other people can come and relax. So I think in that case, the wall will actually help section off this area from the rest of the mock. I've got one more thing to show you guys before I get back to building, and that is this archway. So I got this wall built on the live stream, and I added in the arch to get into the entertainment complex. It's nothing fancy here. It's not even going to have a door, just an opening. I think it looks great. I think this is really going to help with the flow of the city and just allow for more positioning and storytelling with the minifigs. So thank you to you guys who gave me that suggestion. It was pretty easy to put in. Really the only thing I had to account for is this sign, because I want it to be at the same level as this one, so I couldn't make the arch too tall, but I think I have plenty of space to move this up and down. And even though I took apart this whole plateau and all these steps, and I've got a ton of light bluish gray brick over there, I didn't have enough to keep working on this section, so I had to call in some reinforcements and buy this nice 5'11" floor lamp. This isn't going to be the most exciting haul, as this was an emergency order, so I tried to keep it as cheap and simple as possible. Really just a mountain of light bluish gray brick, because before I can get into designing everything, I need to build the outer frame and structure of this final section. Then I got in some more plate for walls and roofs, and really that's just it. More light bluish gray brick. Once again, I find myself starting the Senate building stairway, but there are a couple of differences this time around. First, the stairs aren't running the whole width of the Moc because of the plateaus, and second, this is hopefully the final version of the plaza area. I put the tunnel entrance back in first so I could gauge how much space I had to work with on either side. Next, I laid out where the plateau will go, and the remaining space will be for the steps. There wasn't a specific stud length for any of these sections other than the tunnel entrance, so I just eyeballed them and went with what looked good, giving as much space as I could to the plateaus. As I was building this, I realized the stairway is going to be a lot smaller than I initially planned, so I hope everything still ends up looking grand and imposing, but this way I'll have more room for extra details and builds like statues, minifigures, and other stuff in front of the Senate building instead of just a million steps. I want to get a section of the common area in front of the steps done as well, because I feel like I've been teasing you all and myself with little snippets of what this section will look like, and I want to end this week with some definitive solid builds so we can better see what the finished result will look like. I'm not going to build the whole thing right now because I want to save as many bricks as I can for the actual walls and frame of the Senate building section, and this common area can just be finished off whenever. Normally I wouldn't like all this smooth exposed brick because it looks too simple and plain, but I think it's the perfect look for this section as it's very reminiscent of various places of power in our own world. All right, I got some serious progress done. So the steps, plateau, tunnel are all laid out. Everything is at its set width. I'm really happy with how everything's looking. The only thing I'm a little unsure of is the steps. I'm worried they might be too small just because I wanted them to be the focal point, but I didn't want these plateaus to be tiny because, I wanted the gunships to be able to land on them. The tunnel obviously needed to be wide enough for the road, and so this is kind of what was left. Let me know what you guys think of this layout down below in the comments. I think once I get more of it built and, the stairs go up, they'll probably wrap around this. It'll look better, but I'm just a little nervous about that. But that being said, I do think they look pretty good like that. This is what I used to figure out the layout for the stairs because, I needed to know the rise and the run, where they were going to end up. And so I basically just built a little prototype of how tall the stairs are and how wide they are, and then just built up until I got to a good height. And I wanted to do about a gray base plate's worth of steps in plaza, which would leave the entire last gray base plate for the Senate building, the front of it, the pillars, and all that stuff, which I think should be plenty of space, especially since I'm basically just building a facade of it, the front, so I don't have to worry about an interior and other stuff. So if you're ever building a Moc with steps, this is a great little way to test out how big and how tall you want them to be. Just build a tiny little section off in the corner. That way, you don't build the whole thing and realize it's too tall or too short or the steps need to be changed and have to tear it all down. But speaking of tearing it all down, I did build these sections in a modular way so that if I do have to end up moving them closer or further, I need more space or less space for something. Each row of steps is removable like this. You can see I can pop it out super easy and move it. The tunnels, you guys have already seen, the tunnel walls pop out pretty easily, and this whole section removes pretty easily. So that took a large weight off my shoulders because honestly, I was doing some hardcore procrastination last night just because I didn't want to start this. I was just overwhelmed with how permanent it needed to be. I was like, man, this needs to be, the final width of everything. I need to figure out the final height. It almost felt like this final section of the Senate building needed to be solidified and finished tonight design-wise, and that was just too much for me to handle. So now that everything's much more modular and I realize that, I'm able to move forward with more confidence because I know I can modify it easier. I think that's everything I was going to update you guys on, but I do have one last thing I need to build before the weekends. The last thing I want to do is build some planter boxes and seats for the common area, just to see what it'll look like and to give this Moc a little bit more color. You guys know me, I love my nature and plants, so I'm happy to be able to sneak some into this giant concrete jungle or whatever it's made out of. I want to do an L shape to create a little walled off area or kind of like a little secluded nook to give people a little bit more privacy and make this area feel at least a little bit more sectioned off. I'm also going to add one of my benches. I am really liking how this final version of the steps and front plaza area are looking. I think this might be my favorite part of the Moc. It's definitely going to be very aesthetically pleasing and just very grand and imposing. Next week, I really want to ride this wave of momentum for these front steps and get everything laid out on both sides, as well as potentially making a very big change to the tallest skyscraper. Someone made a suggestion a couple of weeks ago that I really liked that could drastically change what I do with it. All that being said, that wraps up this update. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about it down below in the comments, and I'll catch you next time. But until then, happy building.